to fund building projects.
Inertia and an invested interest, and we have freed up unprecedented levels of public sector land. We're providing hundreds of millions of pounds of finance for small, innovative builders, funding construction speeds, and tens of thousands of derelict homes are being brought back into use. The list goes on and on. So yes, we have done a lot. Yet, it is painfully obvious that there still remains much, much more to be done. 217,000 net additions means 217,000 more people or families with a roof over their heads. 217,000 places where people can put down roots and build their life. But fixing the broken housing market will require a much larger effort. The figures that have been released today show that we have started to turn things round, but they are only a small step, I believe, in the right direction. What we now need is a giant leap. Now, you wouldn't know that if you listen to some people. Even today, I still hear from those who say that there isn't a problem with housing in this country, that we don't need to build more, that affordability is only a problem for millennials that spend too much on nights out or on smashed avocados. It's nonsense. The people who tell me this, usually baby boomers who have long since paid off their own mortgage, they are living in a different world. They're not facing up to the reality of modern-day life, and they have no understanding of the modern market. The statistics are well worn, but they do bear repeating. Nationwide, the average price is now 8 times average income. The average age of a first-time buyer is now 32. People in their early 30s are half as likely as their parents were to own their own home. A third of all men in their 30s are still living with their parents. A stat that will send down a shiver down the spines of all mums and dads everywhere. Now, where once it would have taken an average couple 3 years to save for a deposit, 3 years, it will now take a quarter of a century, assuming, of course, that they can afford to save it all. And last year, the average first-time buyer in London needed a deposit of £90,000. £90,000. That's a lot of avocados. Now, like some kind of noxious oil slick, the effects of our broken housing market are spreading slowly, but they're steadily spreading through all our communities and into all demographics. And if we fail to take decisive action, the impact will not just be felt by those who are directly touched by it. And that's because your home is much more than just a roof over your head. It's not the backdrop to your life. It's a fundamental part of it, and of society too. Our home is supposed to be our anchor, our little patch of certainty in an uncertain world. And once you have that certainty, that stability, then you can start putting down your roots. You can start making friends. You can become part of your local community. You can begin to play your role in those Burkean little platoons that have long been at the heart of much political thinking for 2 centuries and more. So our homes are engines of society. They're also engines of social progress. In pure fiscal terms, yes, but in so many other ways. A safe place where children can do their homework, spend time with their parents. It's much, much harder to get on in life if you're constantly forced to move from school to school, from place to place, because your parents cannot afford the rent. And homes are the rocks on which families and communities are built. If, like me, if you believe in the importance of a strong, stable family unit, if you got into politics to help protect it, then you must also accept that homes should be made available, You simply must. Now, at the heart of conservative thinking, and I would argue at the heart of British life, is the idea that if you work hard, you are free to enjoy the rewards. It's an idea that has been articulated by countless politicians over many generations. But it's an idea that is fundamentally undermined by our broken housing market. Because working hard no longer guarantees the rewards. There is no guarantee that you will be able to afford a place of your own home, build your own life, pass something on to your children. With wages swallowed up by spiralling rents, there's not even a guarantee that you'll be able to have money free that you can spend on so many other things, the things that you want to choose to spend them on. Opportunity is increasingly limited, not by your own talents, but by your ability to make a withdrawal from the bank of mum and dad. The generation crying out for help with housing is not over-entitled. They don't want the world to hand them to it on a plate. They want simple fairness, moral justice, the opportunity to play by the same rules enjoyed by those who came before them. Without affordable, secure, safe housing, we risk creating a rootless generation, drifting from one short tenancy to the next, never staying long enough to play a real role in their community. We risk creating a generation who, in maybe 40 to 50 years, reaches retirement with no property to call their own, and pension pots that have not been filled because so much of their income has gone on the rent. A generation that, without any capital of its own, becomes resentful of capitalism and capitalists. And we risk creating a generation that turns its back on the politicians who failed to lead them. A generation that believes that we don't care. A generation that neither forgives nor forgets, and instead embraces the empty yet attractive sloganeering of those who speak of rent controls and a ban on buying your own council house. You see, Labour's record on housing is dismal. It's an unavoidable fact. When the shadow housing minister was the actual housing minister, building fell to its lowest level since the Second World War. It was a devastating collapse, one from which we have only just started to claw our way back. The people of this country simply cannot afford that kind of failure again. We must fix the broken housing market, and we must fix it now. Tomorrow will be too late. February's white paper, that set out a broad vision for doing so. It described the scale of the challenge and the need for action on many fronts. Since then, we've been putting it into action, laying the foundations for hundreds of thousands of new homes. But I'm about as far from complacent as it's possible to get. So I'm not about to let myself or anyone think that the battle is already won. I'm going to keep pushing for much more change, keep on seeking the answers to the questions that need to be asked. Can and should central government take a bigger, more active role in building homes? Our vision for garden villages and garden towns has been well received by planners and residents alike. But should we now be more bold, taking the concept to the next level and creating larger garden cities? How can we get more land into the system, freeing up more sites on which to build? Despite what some claim, our green and pleasant land is not about to turn concrete grey. Twice a day, more of Britain gets covered by the incoming tide than is currently covered by buildings. England is the most developed part of the UK, yet less than 10% of its land is urban. Building the homes that we need does not mean ruining vast tracts of beautiful countryside. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means working with local communities to make sensible, informed decisions about what is needed and where, and then finding the right sites to do that. Many of those sites already exist as part of the urban landscape. And Bristol was quick to sign up to the pilot scheme that we set out to have a brownfield register. As a result, another 248 sites have been identified right across this city, and none of them require the loss of a single piece of greenfield land.
Well, the Communities Secretary there, Sajid Javid, calling for a giant leap, as he put it, to fix what he called the broken housing market. We'll have more on that on Sky News throughout the day. You're watching All Out Politics. Coming up next, meet the new